Jackie McMullen, Israel Gutierrez, Kevin Blackstone. Great to have you here. We start with the return of the Big Ten. October 23 and 24, 8 games in 8 weeks, plus another week of games, which includes first-place teams in the East and West vying for the conference championship. Quote, once doctors convinced us it was safe to play, we were unanimous in that decision. End quote, Northwestern President Morty Shapiro. Here's what postponing and then waiting and then replanning got the conference. Daily antigen testing and enhanced cardiac screening. The daily testing, similar to what the NFL is doing. Cardiac screening, similar to other conferences, but compared to other conferences in the NCAA, testing is more rigorous. So there's that. And then there's the rejoin of the bowl and college football championship discussion. And there's the conversation we've had the last month over how the conference was handling external pressure of other conferences playing. Kevin, the Big Ten is back. How did they get here? And are you okay with them being here?
Well, I'll just start with the second part of your question and say, no, I'm not okay with them being here. No. You know why they're doing cardiac testing? Because last Friday, the Journal of American Medical Association produced a report on college athletes, in particular college athletes at Ohio State University who had gotten COVID-19. And what they found out was about 15% of them came down with myocarditis, which is a precursor to sudden cardiac death among athletes, which buttresses a report that the NCAA had done back in 2015. So to me, it's putting these players at risk in playing in this pandemic environment that we have. And the only reason they're doing this, the only reason, is for the 700 million Benjamins that the Big Ten Conference is going to get for playing football, 55 million of which they distribute to the schools. So this is a money grab, and when you consider the fact that the majority of players, more than 50% of the football players, are black, it also makes you wonder about all the sloganism about Black Lives Matter. Apparently, not as much as money.
Let's bring in Jackie McMullen here. Throughout the months, we've talked about this, Jackie, and you said, listen to the doctors. And now we're hearing, per the president of Northwestern, the doctors say it can be played safe here. So does the conference deserve commendation for getting the rapid testing for the players, or skepticism here and how they turned around?
Well, I suppose you could say, Tony, in some ways it's a little of both. I think that the Big Ten is going to be the most stringent, as you just pointed out. If a player, for instance, is tested positive, they're out for 21 days, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And in a shortened 8-game season, that's going to be a big chunk. If there's more than 5% of your team test positive for COVID, you got to be shut down. So that's all well and good, but KB's points are good ones. We still don't know enough about this virus. That's what I will say over and over until we do have clarity regarding this, and we do not. And yet, I understand them feeling the pressure, and here's the other problem. It's not just pressure for money. It's these kids who want to play. The parents had a petition out, the Big Ten parents, saying they wanted to play. So the pressure's coming from all over.
Yeah, we've done stories throughout it all. Parents making the appeal at state capitals. We've talked about Pennsylvania state high schools playing, and in the state of Ohio, the high schools are playing, but the state college couldn't until now. Israel Gutierrez, I'll bring you in here on the Big Ten's decision to return.
Well, I think for the entire time that we've talked about sports coming back, the definition of safe to play varies. And I think for these college football athletes, it shouldn't be, hey, we can do the same things that these pro leagues are doing, and it's still, quote unquote, safe to play. For all the reasons that KB laid out, we don't know the true long-term effects here. So when you consider all of that and say, hey, we're just going to do what everybody else is doing. And look at MLB, they powered through a COVID issue. Look at LSU, their coach says most of his players has COVID, and they're just hoping that they don't miss a single game. They're looking at it from that perspective and saying, okay, we won't look as bad, although they're getting seemingly more criticism for coming in late than these other schools who sort of jumped the gun and got in there early.
Is that flat out the wrong perspective to be looking at it, in your opinion, Israel?
Yeah, I do. I think, look, if they look back and say, okay, we were the ones who went the safe route, there's nothing wrong with that. You can look back years from now and say, hey, we probably made the right decision. or you can go ahead and play this single season and make up whatever money you can and say, okay, this is a meaningful football season. It's not. It's a bunch of players who aren't being paid, and it's a bunch of coaches who need to get paid and universities who need to make money. But these players, they just want to play, and that's not good enough reason.
When you consider the entirety of it, and I'll go back to you, Kevin Blackstone, months ago, when the Big Ten made this decision to postpone, I think the belief was every other conference was going to be with them, lock, stock, and there would be no football this year. And then you see other conferences play, and through 2 weeks of the season, there hasn't been one issue that has been reported or that we know of. So, Kevin, as it's all played out, does the Big Ten deserve at least some, I don't want to use the word credit here, but they postponed, they listened to doctors, they waited, the country got in some ways better, and now they're moving forward.
They did, but you know what? The other problem is that the presidents are supposed to be running these universities. They're the ones who are supposed to be running the conference, and clearly they're not. This is a decision driven by money generated by the athletic component of the university, which has always been a weird combination, right? When you have a not-for-profit educational institution tied to a for-profit amateur athletic association. Strange.
Noted. We'll get the schedule for the Big Ten later in the week. For now, that's what we have. We'll move on, and we'll talk about the big news from the NBA last night. I know you guys are ready, so let's just get in there. Nuggets and Clippers. How LA folded like a napkin. How the second half played out last night with Leonard and George going 2 of 18, 5 points. They were scoreless in the fourth quarter of a Game 7. And how everybody's so focused on that, they don't give Denver the proper credit for this comeback from down 3-1 in this series, which followed last round's comeback from down 3-1 in the series. Jackie Mack, you want to start with the Clippers incomprehensibly failing here, or the Nuggets inconceivably surviving here?
I disagree with you. It shouldn't have been inconceivable to anybody. This team, the Nuggets, are for real. I'm telling you, Jokic and Murray, the way they run that pick and roll, interchangeably, by the way, it's pure poetry. And here's the other thing I love about this team. I went down there a couple of years ago, Tony. The minute I walked into that gym, you could feel the camaraderie and the chemistry. You know why that is? Jokic, Murray, Michael Porter, Monty Morris, Torrey Craig, Gary Harris, all homegrown, all drafted or signed by the Denver Nuggets and have played for no one else. That's the kind of thing that I saw down there. And I remember Doc Rivers, when I did a story on Jamal Murray, told me 2 years ago, he's going to lead the league in scoring someday.
This is great. This is all information I could use before this series started. This is incredible. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Jackie, but I remember you saying, both here and on the jump, that you liked this Clippers team. You thought defensively nobody was going to score on them, and that this team, if they could ever get together, would be the best team in the NBA. Is that not right?
That is right, but it was if they could ever get it together, and clearly they did not.
I want more on the Clippers from you in a second. I'm going to bring Israel here, though. Is this about what the Nuggets did or what the Clippers failed to do?
Well, you can't take away from what the Nuggets did. And frankly, this Nuggets team, and actually just the duo of Jokic and Murray, they're different players than they were when the season ended. Jokic obviously in a little bit better shape, and we're not seeing the fatigued Jokic down the stretch of games. We're not seeing the frustrated guy with the rest of his teammates, right? He's just in it for 4 quarters. And Murray is playing as good as he's ever played. And that's where I thought the sort of nightmare situation for him would be against the Clippers, with the length of Kawhi and Paul George. But they and he, meaning the Clippers and Murray, found ways to get him in front of other people and have Patrick Beverley defend him. And the Clippers might think that's a good matchup, but not really, because Pat Beverley is frankly an overrated defender, and you can just shoot over him, which Jamal Murray did. So I do think the Nuggets deserve a lot of credit. But
I love the positivity I'm hearing here. You guys, I love that you're praising. Everybody always focuses on the loser. So focus on the winner. This is great, except Kevin Blackstone. I should have heard this before the series started. Everybody had the Clippers here, and they collapsed. How did this happen?
This is one of the most colossal collapses in NBA history. Look, we have a week to praise the Denver Nuggets, and they are worthy of all that praise. But Kawhi Leonard didn't go all the way back home to L.A. to lose a 3-1 lead against the Denver Nuggets. We had talked about his arrival there and wondered if that was the best team in the NBA, playing next to Paul George and all the veteran talent that they had, and Doc Rivers. But look what happened. For the fourth time this decade, Doc Rivers had a team that was up 3 games to something in the playoffs and didn't win that playoffs. So this is a big problem.
Right.
Paul George disappeared in this series.
Yeah.
Pat Beverly, they're running plays for Pat Beverly? What is that about? So this was a very problematic loss.
Jackie, I got to go back to you, Jackie, because what Kawhi Leonard did last year in Toronto, that's on the Mount Rushmore of things. You know, he won a championship in his 1 year there. A lot of injuries on the other side of that final series, of course. But this year is the exact opposite of that, and he was kind of the GM of the team. He said, bring in Paul George, trade away everybody. Those two guys went scoreless in the fourth quarter of a Game 7, and then afterwards you hear Paul George say the season was not championship or bust? Really?
What?
Yeah, you know, I think he should. If that's how he felt, he should have sent the memo to Steve Ballmer and Doc Rivers, because I can tell you they didn't feel that way.
Yeah.
And sure as heck, Kawhi Leonard and the rest of those guys didn't feel that way. Paul George was a ghost in this series and was certainly a ghost in this final game. Kawhi Leonard, he missed some shots. I'm not going to be as hard on him, but I will say this. Those two guys are the superstars. Where was the urgency? Did you ever feel it in this game? They were trailing. The game's getting later. Where was the urgency? Where was the emotion? That's what I love about the Denver Nuggets. They get it from Mike Malone and from Jokic and Murray. Where was it with the Clippers?
Israel Gutierrez, you and I had the same number of points that Kawhi Leonard and Paul George had in the fourth quarter last night, Game 7.
And a better shooting percentage.
Please, go.
Look, I think this team needs to be dissected, the makeup of it. I don't think any team that has Patrick Beverly as a starting point guard is going to win an NBA championship. I don't think they had enough versatility at the center position. They had, a classic big man and then sort of a big man, an energy big man. They don't really have the proper pieces around Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. And frankly, the idea that Paul George can be the best player in any given game of a playoff game, I don't think that's true anymore, whether it be because of his playoff ghost or whether it be just because he's, sort of heading toward the tail end of his prime. Not really sure, but this team is not made up like a championship team. It should not be on Doc Rivers. It should be on whoever's making the personnel decisions to put the right pieces around them and they give it another run.
It shouldn't be on Doc Rivers? None of this is on Doc Rivers, Kevin Blackstone?
Not none of it. Not all of it. Like, he shouldn't lose his job over it.
Mm-hmm. Well, but I'm just saying, you look to the coach. I mean, Doc's been a leader out there. I mean, we praised him for any number of reasons. Everybody likes Doc. We like Doc. But I'm just saying, you're up 3-1 on the Denver Nuggets. You got to figure out a way to get it done.
We are done right here, taking a break. Coming up, look at this photo. It's about the best block ever. Jordan on Ewing in 88, maybe. Akeem on Starks in 94. Akeem Warwick to win the 2003 national title in college. Nate on Yao. Jackie, you just reminded me. Tayshaun Prince chasing down Reggie. Last week, Kawhi's middle finger. I think LeBron in the finals is in a class of its own. But Bam Adebayo last night from every angle. He hasn't even jumped yet when Tatum is cocking it back. The fourth quarter that Miami had and how this team is now 9-1 in the playoffs in a second. But start with that block, Israel. How great.
I mean, it was amazing. And you've got Jason Tatum, who is an up-and-coming superstar in this league, if he's not already a superstar. And it's just for the tie. And he's there when you feel like he's not even close to being able to recover. And he is there. And a little underrated thing about that is Jimmy Butler not fouling, letting him go, and understanding that he's going to have help. And boy, did he ever.
I've been watching photos of this and video of this from every different angle, and there's a shot of Jimmy Butler's face while it's happening where it's like he knew it was going to happen. It's great. Jackie, all time, how great is this block?
Oh, it's right up there, top 3 for sure. Just amazing. Because listen, Jason Tatum, are you kidding me? I can't think of anybody else that could do that to him. And I'm telling you, Bam Adebayo, he is the epicenter of this Heat team. I know Jimmy Butler gets a lot of the press, but how well Bam Adebayo plays will decide whether the Heat win this series, and they're off to a pretty good start.
So, number 1 is LeBron, and number 2, you have another block in there you like?
I do love my man Tayshaun. I do love my man Tayshaun in 2004. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Kevin Blackstone on the block first.
Yeah, I would have to agree with Jackie Mack. I would say that's about number 3 on my list behind those two. But what makes this really fantastic is, first of all, Jason Tatum, remember, he had missed that three-pointer in regulation. So this time he does what we always say do. Go to the rack and he goes to the rack, and who's there to meet him? Another guy drafted in his in that same first round, a number of notches below him to meet him at the rim.
I hate that shot at the end of regulation you were just talking about. I mean, you do nothing for 20 seconds and you hoist up a three. Draw up a play.
Horrible.
But last thing on this, though, my hand can barely go like this to be. How is his hand not pulverized by the force of Tatum throwing it down? It's when I carry groceries and they bend my hand back, I got to take a week off work. All right, let's talk about this game. What does this one win do for Miami? And there's one loss, Jackie. Actually, start with it from the Boston angle, Jackie, because they had this in the fourth quarter and it got away.
Yeah, if I'm Boston this morning, I'm pretty disappointed. And it's referencing that three-pointer you were talking about. Why do the Celtics go ISO at the end of games? I don't understand it. When they move the ball, they play better, which is why they need Gordon Hayward so desperately, because he's the guy that moves the ball better than anyone. That Kemba ISO, I didn't like that either. The Celtics should be very upset this morning. This was a winnable game they should have had against a great team that didn't play as well as they can.
Are you questioning Brad Stevens there? Then the way you're saying that they went so ISO, too ISO heavy?
Well, I don't know if Brad Stevens called that from the sidelines. If he did, then I guess I am questioning
well,
him.
he
But
can
I
call
would
it off
think
if he's seeing it happen. KB, how about you?
Well, I think it's problematic for Celtics right now. You know, Jason Tatum's got to be a little bit concerned about getting blocked at the rim. But the other thing is that the Miami Heat, they have such a great mix of young talent that is tough and that gritty old talents like the guys you run into sitting outside of the liquor store in the neighborhood. Just tough dudes. You give them their respect because they've been there before and they continue to deliver.
Okay, and how about you, Israel Gutierrez?
I don't know if I've ever seen Goran Dragic and Duncan Robinson outside of a liquor store, but I don't think I'd be scared of them. I think the last shots that you're talking about here are pretty telling, where you've got Jimmy Butler, at least in regulation, Jimmy Butler going up through Jason Tatum for an and one, and then you've got Tatum taking that long shot contested against Derrick Jones Jr. The Miami Heat's going to do whatever it takes, and they're not relying on talent. They're relying on toughness and unity, and that's what they've done this entire bubble experience.
So the block last night was huge. The Game 7 was huge. This shot was huge. Let's go. WNBA is in single elimination in this part of their postseason, so this makes this enormous. And the intensity is just off the rails. Washington thinking they're going to pull off a huge upset to knock off Phoenix. Shea Petty wins it for Phoenix at the buzzer, making this even more bonkers. Petty was cut by Washington 4 weeks ago with the intention to bring her back after she cleared waivers, but Phoenix scooped her up. KB, this means your reigning champion sticks are done in. Is this bittersweet, bitter, or sweet?
It may just be cold-blooded. I mean, look at that stroke on that shot, and the fact that, as you just mentioned, the whole reason she's even in the bubble is the Mystics in the first place.
Israel?
They drew that play up for her to beat the team that released her in the bubble, and she did it after the flyby. That play is amazing.
Yeah. Jackie?
First of all, guys, it's called the wobble, not the bubble. And this is why I love this. Shea Petty is 31 years old. She loves the team she just beat because they didn't look like they did her wrong. I love this. My favorite thing of the day.
One last thing on it. Diana Taurasi's on the team, and Shea Petty's the one taking the shot. That's just, to me, the greatest thing about it.
Skylar Diggins just hit one.
Kevin Blackistone, you're going to hit one right now out of the park because you're going to be watching Showdown between Jackie Mack and Israel Gutierrez.
That's some good stuff.
We'll be back in 2 minutes. Jackie McMullen, Israel Gutierrez, good luck in Showdown. Here's a quote. Quote, I think the last person you want to call out after the first game of the year is Tom Brady. Maybe they had mutual truce going into the game. I'm going to be hard on you. If not, dissension could easily enter quickly. End quote. Brett Favre on Sirius XM Radio today talking about how public Bruce Arians called out Tom Brady after the loss. Jackie Mack, what you got? Truce or dissension?
I don't think either. I don't think he called out Tom Brady. And by the way, Tom Brady can handle it. Are you kidding me? He played for Bill Belichick. He used to put bad throws up and said that the high school football team could do better.
But he never did that publicly, did he? Mm-hmm. Israel, how about you?
I mean, I didn't think it was that bad publicly either. I only believe that dissension actually sneaks into a locker room when you don't blame the people who deserve the blame. And Arians blamed Brady.
Yep.
Everybody saw it. Seemed fair.
Point, Israel Gutierrez. Showdown 2. It says U.S. Open Preview Extravaganza. Are you guys going to promise me you're going to be extravagant in your preview? Wingfoot. It was so hard. Last time they hosted the Open, the winner was at +5. Here comes the pain, Israel. What can we expect?
Well, I mean, if you go by the FedEx Championship that just ended, you feel like Dustin Johnson should be the favorite. But I think with those $15 million he just won, he's probably going to be a little bit not focused. I'm going to go with John Rahm in this one.
Jackie?
Wow, that was excellent, insightful extravaganza there. Thank you so much for that, Israel. Greatly appreciate.
You better bring it
Look,
then, Jackie.
Wingfoot is a very difficult course. The winner, I think, will be at +2 this year. How about that? But I'm taking Justin Thomas, not Tiger Woods at 40-1, where everyone's going to try to make money.
I'm sensing a trend here. You pick Justin Thomas in every tournament when it comes up.
I do. You noticed that. Good for you.
I think we're going to have to come up with a better word than extravaganza next time. Israel Gutierrez, take the FaceTime.
Just to end us on a little bit of feel-good, you didn't think it could get any more feel-good than Maya Moore taking a sabbatical and getting Jonathan Irons, false or improperly accused of a crime, out of prison. Now we find out today on Good Morning America, they got married. They've known each other for 13 years, and now this story has somehow a happier ending than we all could have imagined. Congratulations to the two of them.
It's a movie. It's going to be a movie. Robin Rob is going to put together a movie.
Absolutely.
Congratulations, couple. We're done.